Greetings and welcome to episode 60 of CultureWatch Radio. I'm Mark Rabich and with me is Bill Muhlenberg. G'day to you, Bill.
Hey, great to be with you.
Now, the big news from America in the last week has been that there was a leak from the Supreme Court as they deliberate over a case which involves abortion, and it appears from this leak that it looks like the famous or infamous Roe v. Wade decision from almost 50 years ago looks like being overturned. And you've written an article about that entitled 5 Myths About SCOTUS and Abortion. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, just for those who don't know, SCOTUS, the acronym for Supreme Court of the United States. And Justice Alito, one of them, who was writing a dissenting kind of opinion in terms of arguing that Roe v. Wade, 1973, was actually unconstitutional. And somehow that got leaked. We don't know how as yet. It could have been a leftist justice or one of his clerks or one of her clerks who did it. But if it's found out, they should be, punished by the full force of the law. This has never happened before. But the leak basically said that it looks like we have a 5-4 majority who will be deciding, well, in perhaps June or July, on this very matter. If you have 5-4 now, they can, of course, change their minds by then, so it's not a foregone conclusion. But if they stick with this seeming majority, well, then, it could be the end of Roe v. Wade as we know it. And, of course, that's, well, despite all the shrill rhetoric from the pro-aborts, it's really nothing more than going back to the status quo, which was all of the 50 states and the people who live there actually get to decide, kind of like, democracy, the people get to decide how they're going to look at this particular issue, whether they keep it legal, whether it has restrictions and so on. What Roe v. Wade did in 73 was strike down the laws of all 50 states and basically let these 5 unelected, unrepresentative judges determine how things would go. So it'll just be bringing things back to the way things were if it happens. But, of course, the hyper-left got all bent out of shape, foaming at the mouth. It's the end of the world as we know it. Women will be enslaved and, democracy will die. But we still have to wait and see how it's all going to pan out. But, interesting development indeed.
Of course, the woman who was at the centre of that case,
Yes.
Norma McCorvey, I think it is,
Yes.
she, I guess, sort of recanted or reversed her point of view from the original decision, and that was quite an amazing testimony.
Yeah, well, absolutely. She actually became a Christian. She became very strongly pro-life, and she did pass away recently, but so she was at the center of the case, and she basically renounced the whole thing, regretted that she was used for the purposes of legalizing abortion, and became a very strong champion for the pro-life movement. So, in fact, there's been many like that over the years, people either abortionists themselves who've since become very strongly pro-life or what have you. So a lot of people have been thinking and having a moral reassessment. So, it's interesting. The center piece of this case, that gal herself, went to the other side.
Now, all of this, of course, is quite amazing given what's happened in the last 2 years, that we've had a great deal of overriding of that that famous pro-choice argument, if you like, of bodily autonomy and government not having the right to force people to do anything when it comes to medical procedures. And I just think it's astonishing. We've got this ironic situation now where they seem to have turned on a 10-cent coin. They're saying, oh, yes, we get now the right to do what we like. But in this case, what's astonishing is, the primary purpose of abortion is the ending of a life, whereas these measures that they were forcing people to, I mean, the best that you could say in terms of the underlying motivation that they were using to justify it all was saving people's lives, is at best you could say it was secondary. And in any case, we know plenty of people who have been vaccinated, of course, who either caught COVID or passed it on to other people. So the very thing that, the very criterion that they were saying was so important, in fact, turned out not to be so important anyway. But I just find it astonishing that we've got this situation where bodily autonomy is even an argument in this particular subject, but here they are reusing it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, as we often say, the left doesn't have any standards at all, but if they do, they're double standards. Hypocrisy is the name of the game. You're quite right. 2 years we've had of, the pro-lockdown, pro-vaccine mandate, the whole mandatory medicine or health fascism. For 2 years we've had this idea, sorry, you do not have bodily autonomy. You do not have a right over your own body. If the government wants to have you sticking stuff into your body, getting a jab of untested, untrialed, rush-through vaccines, well, you have to do it. End of story. And basically most people, certainly the left, happily went along right with it. And then all of a sudden, in this past week, when this leak came out, all of a sudden they rediscovered, my body, my choice, bodily autonomy. All of a sudden, after 2 years of absence, it's back on the platform. So, the left is just... it's mad the way they play their games, but whatever suits their agenda, whatever fits their narrative, no matter how illogical, no matter how contradictory, no matter how inconsistent, that's how the left operates.
Right. Well, taking this subject and perhaps turning it a little bit locally, of course, we're here in Australia, and so this impending decision doesn't directly affect us, but of course we can cheer on from the other side of the Pacific. And a quite prominent Liberal politician from the Western Metropolitan region in Victoria, a state politician, has been quite outspoken for many years against abortion and has been heavily involved in the March for the Babies, which happens early in October on the anniversary of the sad decision where Victorian Parliament decided to decriminalise abortion up until birth. Bernie Finn has been a stalwart for many years on this subject and quite consistent and someone definitely worth supporting. And of course he's heard about this possibility or this decision coming from the Supreme Court, from SCOTUS in America, and is cheering it on and saying, well, he hopes that it happens over here in Victoria. And a lot of his colleagues in the Liberal Party have taken exception to it, including the leader of the Victorian Liberal Party, Matthew Guy, and I'm just astonished that some of these Liberal Party members that they're taking this position of criticising Bernie.
Yeah, it's been quite a shocker, no question about it. Bernie's been a very strong, consistent pro-lifer forever. Been 23 years with the Liberals, 45 years he's been pro-life. He's never hidden his views on the matter. So yeah, he just came out after the leak happened in the U.S. saying, well, I'm praying that, this is going to happen, that it will come through, the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. He said killing babies is criminal. It's certainly immoral. So he's quite right to be cheering on what's happening there, and to pick up what you said, maybe to slightly tweak it. Sure, while what happens in the U.S. in a sense doesn't directly impact us, you could say at least indirectly it certainly does. The truth of the matter is what happens in America tends to happen in much of the rest of the world. I'm an American, so what Americans do tends to get followed by so many other countries, certainly in the West. So back in 1973, that wasn't the very first legalization of abortion, but it was among the first. So that really sent the dominoes falling, one country after another. After Roe v. Wade, they did the same, legalized abortion. So the pro-aborts are rightly up in arms. They're very concerned. If now we overturn Roe v. Wade, well, that may well have an impact on many other countries, including Australia. So Bernie Finn is quite right to point out what's happening there, to say he wishes he could see things like that happening here. But as you say, sadly, his own colleagues are turning on him, treating him like Attila the Hun, treating him like, he's an axe murderer, all because he thinks it's not actually good form to be slaughtering babies in the mother's womb. It's not something any civilized society should be proud of. And yet, as you say, Matthew Guy and some of his colleagues are calling him extreme. He's got to shut up. He's got to stop sharing his extremist points of view. I mean, even our Dan Andrews, the Labour Premier, has said his views are extreme and a threat to women. Well, you expect that of Dan Andrews, but when you get fellow liberals, in theory conservatives, attacking Bernie for the same thing, we're in a bad way. If the libs are going to talk and walk just like Labour and the Greens, well, that doesn't give us much of a choice, certainly at the state level. And sadly, we've seen all this played out at the federal level as well. So, that's a whole big worry, given that we've got a federal election coming up in just under 2 weeks.
It just seems amazing to me that you have people who claim to be conservative and very strong when it comes to, or supposedly meant to be very strong when it comes to looking at history and seeing what works in terms of maintaining and upholding a future for that society. And we have centuries to look at in terms of what things work economically and socially in terms of keeping a society going. And it just seems obvious to me that if you're murdering your own children, you probably don't have much of a future. And God gave Moses the 10 Commandments over 3,000 years ago, and the sixth commandment is pretty clear: just don't murder. And you would think that when you look at the innocence and the helplessness of a child, that would be obvious. I mean, and many of these people too. I mean, if the kind of things that have to be done to terminate the life of the unborn were done to kittens or puppies or any animals at all, I mean, there'd just be outrage. And yet, when it comes to human beings, the people seem to be blind to that. But it's just incredibly disappointing that we have so-called conservative politicians who don't seem to have a coherent, principled viewpoint. And I don't know, what do we do?
Well, that's the problem, and I've written on this often, not just state, but as I say, federal level. Conservatives are supposed to be conservative, but our Liberal Party, our National Party, has often been anything but on a whole range of issues, not just abortion. So I suspect today, if there was some kind of straw poll taken, of all the libs and nats, state and federal, things like, say, marriage and family. Do you still think marriage is between a man and a woman, or do you support the sanctity of life, and so on? I suspect today the majority would not support some of these core fundamental values that Christians and conservatives do support, or at least ought to support. So, what happens? I think we've talked about this before. When the whole situation kind of veers to the left, right? The center is no longer the center. That's moved leftwards. So the so-called parties of the right, they also have moved to the left. So we really don't have, at least with the major parties, a right-wing conservative party that holds to core principles like the sanctity of human life. So, come May 21 at the federal election, I guess we have to look to smaller parties, independents, those who are strongly pro-life and as a principled commitment. It's a non-negotiable. And by the way, we can pray for Bernie Finn. It's looking very likely he'll be booted out one way or another from the Liberal Party. So if he does get the flick, what does he do? Does he keep sitting there running as, say, independent, perhaps join a small party? So he'll need wisdom. I'm sure he's thinking these things through right now. He may already, in fact, have decided what he's going to do. We haven't heard the last of it yet, but it's a dilemma for any strong conservative, certainly Christian, pro-life conservative in the main political parties. Most of the parties don't want these people. You're persona non grata. You're anathema to the main parties. They don't want to touch abortion with a 10-foot pole. And so what do you do? I think that's why I get about 30% of voters in this coming federal election are looking away from the two main parties, maybe going with independents or smaller parties. So hopefully that trend may continue, but we got to do something because the libs and the nats are letting us down big time. And sadly, Scott Morrison has said the same. He said he's not going to do anything about abortion. That will remain. So, what do you got? A guy who claims to be a Christian, prime minister, but he doesn't want to do anything about abortion. So we're in a bad way when it comes to the main parties.
So finally, would you maybe speak to what we can do as individuals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's always the million-dollar question. I mean, not too long ago, I'd say, well, consider joining a major party, consider getting involved, maybe run for the libs or the nats. But given how they've treated Bernie Finn, at least in Victoria, given how they've treated federally people like Amanda Stoker, Kevin Andrews, others have simply left. Craig Kelly, George Christensen, right? They've all abandoned ship because they know the libs are not going to be true to conservative values. So it may or may not be a good way to go in terms of joining a big party, but you can certainly support some of the smaller pro-life parties. In fact, we recently put together a Christian pro-family checklist in which we look at these various parties, and some of the smaller parties are quite good on the life issues. So we need to look at other options, sadly, as well as pray for those who are still there, and pray that somehow, come May 21, we get some kind of pro-life outcome, because at the moment it's not looking very reassuring.
All right, well, thank you for today's episode, Bill, and there's more at the Culture Watch website. Join us again next time with another episode of Culture Watch Radio.